Good to have your company. That is Phil Gardner, the CEO of the Newcastle Knights. Mistakes were made. He admitted that during that press conference. He admits there was a drinking culture as well up there in Newcastle amongst the players before Nathan Brown got there. No meetings with any coaches, he said, Phil Gardner, before the deal was done to exit Nathan Brown. Said he hadn't spoken directly to anybody as far as the coaching position was concerned until he made the decision with Nathan Brown. We did ask him to come on the program this morning. He politely declined to come on. Dean Ritchie from the Daily Telegraph joins us. I think we used the word schmozzle yesterday, and the schmozzle continued late yesterday afternoon. Good morning, Bulldog.
Yeah, good morning, Tico. Good morning, Jimmy. Certainly a messy era in the Knights' history.
Yeah.
I made some calls yesterday to some prominent contacts up there who were quite adamant that the playing group was split. There were those that wanted Nathan and those that didn't. Nathan sought out some support from some senior players, two of those being David Klemmer and Mitchell Pearce, and that support wasn't forthcoming. Nathan felt that there was a toxic environment had engulfed the club. Training had become lethargic, and basically he said, I have to leave now. This club can't move forward with me here. Hence the decision one day to keep him was changed the following day.
It was an unusual situation though, wasn't it? And we don't see it very many cases, Dino. We've spoken about it this morning. Usually when you sack a coach, they go straight away. But they said, oh, no, stay on for 3 weeks. And I think Brownie probably thought, yeah, I'll stay on for 3 weeks. And then the response that he got on the Saturday night against the West Tigers just showed that it was clear, like you had to make the move.
It's interesting, Jimmy, to find out what the players think. As has been written, I was told again yesterday that he walked into the Campbelltown away dressing room and said out loud to his senior players, if me being here is affecting your performances, I'll walk away straight away. You've got 24 hours to text me by tomorrow morning to let me know that you're staying, and no one did. Quite clearly then, senior players, in their own way, had said to Nathan Brown, we don't want you here.
That's a response in itself, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Brown was getting tired of the players using him as an excuse for on-field failure. Every time a coach goes or there's some innuendo about a coach and they start losing, the players go, first up, the coach's fault. This is why we're not performing. He'd had a gutful of that as well. So in the end, it became totally untenable that he could stay. And as you said, Jimmy, I'm surprised that they even thought about him seeing out those last 3 games. It was never going to work.
Well, that was their idea, not his.
Correct.
He was prepared to go. He was prepared to go straight away. Adam O'Brien is a rookie coach. I say rookie coach, never been in charge of his own particular club. If he takes over that position, wow. Welcome to the furnace.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I heard you guys this morning
side
saying...
with senior players.
Yeah, saying he hasn't had to drop a player. He's never had to have a hard chat about contracts.
No.
But everyone has to have a first year. And you would imagine being under Bellamy and Robinson that this guy does have some form of a hardened edge about him because, Bellamy takes no prisoners, nor does Robinson. I think they'll start fresh next year, and I don't think the hangover from this year will affect them. But how much blood is on the hands of senior players, I guess, will emerge in coming days. And do those senior players have a right to express their dismay in a coach? I guess they do.
Yeah.
And from a club's point of view, it is easier to get rid of one bloke than try to harness the angst of 6 or 7 blokes.
The issue was there that the players had the chance to respond, and that was via their performance on Saturday night, and that was not forthcoming. So that's where they've let themselves down. The other thing is we heard from someone's called the program and said, hey, old boys' day on Saturday, that's generally speaking a famous day for the club, and there was some speculation that the old boys were going to boycott the day. So I got in contact with Matty Parsons, former premiership winner there in 2001, great man. He said, no, and you can quote me, the club will always be there. Officials, players, coaches come and go, but no one is more important than the club and the supporters and the town.
Yeah, I got that same message actually this morning, Jimmy. I hadn't made a call, so you're one step ahead of me there. But I would have been stunned if the likes of the Johns brothers and the Danny Badirases turned their back on the club and didn't show up. I think that would be an extreme move. Times are tough, but you've still got to stick solid in the whole scheme of it. Look, Mitchell Pearce and David Klemmer, I don't want to suggest that they were behind the sacking. I'm merely saying that when Nathan Brown went to them for support, it wasn't forthcoming. But it would be inaccurate and inappropriate to say that they were behind the sacking.
They led a coup or anything like
but
that.
I can tell you that the officials I spoke to yesterday mentioned those two names as blokes that didn't jump in behind Brownie when he needed that support.
Yeah.
Troy Pizzette's a name that keeps bobbing up too, and he's a recruitment in a recruitment position at the Newcastle Knights. Now, the speculation is that he was helping Phil Gardner in relation to recruitment of players and coaches. Now, how long this has been going on is really the $64,000 question, isn't it? How long have they been sounding out Adam O'Brien and behind the back of not only Nathan Brown, but also behind the back of, from what we understand, football manager Brian Canavan and former rugby league administrator who's got an enormous amount of experience, John Quayle. Any update on that, Dino?
The mail I get, Jimmy, is that Pizzette was doing it with Gardner. Gardner was the one sort of saying, go and do this, go and do that, but keep it quiet. Pizzette's been interviewed by the media and essentially denied all knowledge that he did anything untoward. He was merely acting on the suggestion of his boss. Look, there's no doubt something was going on because Nathan Brown's heard about it and gone in front
second hand.
Well,
and gone in front of Phil Gardner. So
that's why we are where we are now, isn't it? Because he heard the rumours and he fronted Phil Gardner.
Correct.
So it's and the strange one was, and I said at the time, normally if you're keeping your coach, the star player goes, which was a Jesse Ramian, one of the star recruits there, but they've lost them both now. So instead of maybe only losing one, that being Jesse Ramian or that being Nathan Brown, now you've lost your coach and one of your key players, Jesse Ramian, or maybe he wasn't a key player going ahead for Newcastle.
It's funny, TK. Generally when these things happen in rugby league, you'll find out the PR battle is won by the club. The coach is on the nose, results are poor, the fans want him out, and that's how it ends. But in this case, it's almost been flipped on its head where Nathan Brown has come out of this smelling like roses. And if there is such a thing as a PR battle, Nathan has come out well and truly on top. And a lot of fans have actually turned on the club and how they've handled this situation. So it's a bit unique in that generally the coach is the bad guy, but in this case, Nathan, whether he's a good coach or not, has handled himself with a lot of dignity, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And the interesting thing around this is, and it comes to the point you want to make around update on Dave Fafita and Corey Oates with the Brisbane Broncos. We know that there's 15 Brisbane Broncos players who are managed by Isaac Moses. Their coach, Anthony Seibold, is managed by Isaac Moses. Adam O'Brien, who we think is going to be announced for the Newcastle Knights, is managed by Isaac Moses. This is the impact it can have. Matt Lodge and Tavita Pangai Jr. are managed by Isaac Moses. They have re-signed with the club. David Fafita, you could argue, is a better talent than both of those players. He remains unsigned. He is not managed by Isaac Moses.
It's extraordinary the rise in prominence in the last 6 or 7 years of player managers. They are now essentially pushing forward who should be coaching and playing at clubs. Years ago, they were the blokes that went into meetings, they made sure that their client was being looked after, all the proper clauses were included, and that was it. Now, they are the ones making decisions that are more powerful sometimes than boards.
They're sort of shaping your club instead of the club shaping itself, which is absurd.
Yeah.
It is the lunatics running the asylum.
And that's the lack of experience from the administrators to not recognise what's happening. And then the other, and that comes back to Phil Gardner. We talked about how the success he's had in the club industry does not automatically translate to success running another business that is a rugby league club, which is a very different style of business.
Nick Politis, Jimmy. Nick Politis will not deal with Isaac Moses. It stems over many years.
Yes.
The James Tedesco saga from a couple of years ago was the one. So he won't deal with him. Yet the Roosters still win the premiership. So you can stand up to these blokes if you want to. And I know Nick's got a powerful roster, and it's a bit easier to do that when you've got a bit of clout behind you. And he's Nick Politis. The point I'm making is so that you can stand up to these blokes and go, no, we run the club, you don't.
Nick's strategy-wise is the master because he'd had the falling out with Isaac Moses. He had James Tedesco. They lost Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. They wanted to get Tedesco. So rather than Nick negotiate with Isaac Moses, because he said he wouldn't do that, he got Anthony Minicello to negotiate with James Tedesco directly because they had a relationship coming out of the Italian side.
Well, Nick rang Moses last week and unloaded after the Adam O'Brien rumour
Adam O'Brien, absolutely.
emerged. So quite clearly he's still got his number in his phone and just tends to ring it when he's in a foul mood.
Well, quickly, a few things. This will change the entire coaching structure up there at Newcastle quite clearly. Christian Wolf, he's got the gig for 2 games. And then, he was assistant coach to Brownie. I mean, normally the whole staff goes, maybe the physio, it could be 10 blokes actually lose their position. What happens with Christian Wolf?
Well, at the moment...
Who manages him?
Yeah, that's a good question. At the moment, look, he's in line for the St Helens job with Jason Demetrio. I'm hearing they're down to the final 2.
Good job.
Ooh.
So Wolf may end up heading to England, which is proven to be quite a good learning area now in terms of this morning you mentioned it, didn't you, Jimmy? Robinson, Brown, Maguire, etc., etc. So I don't think Christian Wolf will be lost once he departs the temporary job up there in Newcastle. But Adam O'Brien, he is under excruciating pressure next year. They've made the decision. The fans aren't happy. If he comes in and loses his first 3-4 games, the you-know-what will hit the fan yet again.
I'll tell you what's interesting. Who does he get as his assistants? Because he has, as we know, we're just talking, he hasn't had a head coaching. He won't take Fitzy said no. Jason Riles, these are the guys who are next in line. Get to the other point. Joey Arrow onto the open market, from what we understand. Tell you what, there'll be some interest to him. He's a star.
Yeah, Jimmy, 8 clubs is what I'm hearing. The Gold Coast had hoped to nail him down before November 1, given his standing in the game and state of origin player and a future Queensland captain in waiting. But it now looks like he has said, you know what, I wouldn't mind testing myself on the open market. So once November 1 comes, I think you'll find there'll be a flurry of action, if it's not already happening behind the scenes. But
no, it's not happening. It can't happen.
Of course not. But it is a setback, though, Jimmy, in my eyes, for Justin Holbrook early on. I'm sure he would have liked, through Mal Meninga, to have nailed Arrow down before he went on the open market. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen at the moment. And, watch them come running with big checks in their hands.
Called a game of the Bulldogs a couple of weeks ago. Josh Jackson. It was on Thursday night. Outstanding in that game against Parramatta. What's some news around Josh Jackson?
Yeah, I think you'll find, Jimmy, he's under contract until the end of next season. But after this season, which is only a couple of weeks away, assuming the Dogs don't make the finals, albeit they still a chance, they will look to extend, which I don't know exactly whether it'll be 2 or 3 years, but that could just about finish Josh Jackson's career, and that would mean he'd finish a one-club hero at Belmore. And, where history rates Josh Jackson, I guess we will find out in time. But when you come to the great Canterbury players who put in every week and out of that old Dogs of War style, I think Josh Jackson deserves to be held up there in the elite class.
Great to see him having some success with all that hard work that he puts in every week. Good on you, Bulldog.
Thank you.
So much happening in the world of rugby league. As always, the game that just keeps on giving. It's 8:21.